Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning to you if you're on the West Coast. My name is Gabrielle Claiborne, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am honored to be today's moderator as we discuss the power of authenticity. But before we hear from myself and our esteemed panelists, I want to go over a few housekeeping items with you. In order to chat with other attendees and participants, we want to invite you to click on the Session tab on the right-hand side of your screen and then click Comments. To join the Q&A segment that we'll have at the end of our time together today, just click on the Q&A tab to ask the panelists a question. And if you'd like to enable the closed caption feature, you can do so by clicking the CC button at the bottom of the viewing window. So now that we've had the housekeeping items out of the way, let's jump right into today's conversation. You know, for much of my life, I grappled with what authenticity looked like for me, let alone experiencing the power of living an authentic life. But today, after 12 years of navigating a gender transition, my perspective of authenticity has changed. I now know from the perspective of my own personal lived experience, not only what is required of us to live an authentic life, but also the benefits that we and our world experience when we say yes to our yes. And oftentimes when someone hears my gender transition story, they tell me, Gabrielle, you're so courageous. I could never do what you did. But I haven't always been courageous, I respond by saying this, especially when it came to getting honest with what my heart was saying about the essence of who I am as a person. In fact, I spent half of my life wrestling with culture's expectations regarding my gender. The fear in my head kept me stuck in a place that was inauthentic with my heart. Have you ever felt inauthentic? Maybe you felt your heart inviting you in a new vocational direction, but your head worried about finances. Or have you ever felt like you weren't being your true self in a relationship? Feeling inauthentic is something that many of us have experienced in the past. Or perhaps there is something in your life right now, maybe you're feeling from your heart inviting you to consider something that might result in pushback from your family and friends, or even your faith community. Well, that's where I found myself 17 years ago when the man that I'd been living as stumbled across a website showing pictures of transgender women. What I was seeing finally explained the internal gender dilemma that I'd been struggling with for decades. And when I saw these images, immediately my heart knew, that's me. But then my head said, don't be ridiculous, Gabrielle. You can never be that person. What would your church say? They're not going to let a trans woman continue serving as an elder and a Bible study leader. And think of your family. For heaven's sakes, your dad is a Pentecostal preacher. This will devastate your parents. And what about your wife and the kids? You could lose your entire family. Do you want to be alone for the rest of your life? And what about your career, your six-figure income? You could lose everything. Well, despite my head's relentless attempts to convince me of these risks, my heart was quietly and persistently inviting me to consider a different path, a path of integrity and authenticity. For the next 5 years, I mostly felt stuck, but I did take one very small step in response to my heart's invitation. I continued researching online and learning what I could from the little things here and there. Then one day I Googled dressing services, Atlanta, and to my amazement, a site popped up. Explore your feminine side. This was a local dressing service here in Atlanta run by a woman by the name of Ramona who actually made a living helping biological males dress as women. I panicked. My online research had just gone from not too scary to absolutely terrifying. Now I had a choice to make. I could take this next frightening step and call Ramona, or I could stay stuck. Well, for the next couple of weeks, that's exactly what I did. I stayed stuck. But finally, I mustered the courage to call and make an appointment with her. Actually, showing up for that appointment was my next scary step. In fact, I was just a hot mess that day as I was driving to the appointment. But as soon as Ramona greeted me at the door and ushered me upstairs to her dressing salon, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. You see, her salon was rooms of dresses and shoes and wigs and jewelry and drawers of lingerie. So over the next couple of hours, Ramona worked her magic and dressed me head to toe in my true feminine gender expression. After Ramona got me all patted and dressed, she sat me down in her salon chair and started applying the makeup and a wig, things that I had never done for myself before. Now, all this time that she was doing my makeup and my hair, she was standing between me and the mirror, so I wasn't able to see the transformation that was taking place. When she was done, she looked at me and she says, "Gabrielle, are you ready?" With my heart beating wildly, I said, "I think so." It was at that moment Ramona stepped away from the mirror, and there, for the very first time, I saw myself on the outside as the person I knew I was on the inside. I was 49 years old and meeting myself for the very first time. It was at that moment I knew this is me. You know, I smile every time I think about that day because it was the first time that I felt whole as a person. And what I learned from this experience is that to experience the power of authenticity, we must acknowledge the fears in our heads, but act on the truth of our hearts. You know, the reality is the fears are never going to go away because they're there to serve a purpose. They're there to protect us, to make us feel comfortable. But at some point, we have to decide, do we want to live our lives comfortably, or do we want to live our lives authentically? So I trust that after today's conversation, you will find the courage within yourself to take courageous steps in the direction of your most authentic self and experience the life of power and purposefulness like you've never dreamed.